what you're trying to say. Just say the thing. Hi cousins, I'm Shamaya. It's like papaya, except it's not. And this is Plot Twist Please, a place where I like to use pop culture to make our brains a little cozier. Let's get it started. Oh, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Okay, fun update. My basil plant is still growing. Because I was really nervous about it. I thought that I accidentally sprayed her with some hair conditioner instead of water because I was using like the same squirt bottle that I use with my water and hair conditioner mix. If you know, you know. And I was spraying her and I was like, girl, I need you to pull through because I think I just sprayed you with a whole lot of chemicals. And she pulled through because she's a survivor, just like her mama. So today I want to answer the question, how do we combat friendship anxiety with autistic people? So I am an autistic Black woman, and so I'm coming from a perspective of lived experience, plus the experience of having worked with a lot of autistic children in the past as a teacher and as someone who leads workshops on that kind of thing. We're talking about friendship anxiety here, just to, clarify. Not social anxiety, which is related, but friendship anxiety is something very specific. It's not necessarily being in a social environment and being anxious about those interactions, but it's being anxious about an interaction within a relationship that you've already established with somebody, or that you feel like you've already established with somebody. There are some more links on what friendship anxiety is and how it affects the general population, as well as how it affects autistics below. So clickety-click at that if you want more information on that. Basically, friendship anxiety is the fear of losing a friendship with somebody because you don't know how to manage a friendship, or because you fear you don't know how to manage that friendship. That involves fear of being excluded from social events involving that friend, fear of saying the wrong thing and upsetting that friend, fear of eventually losing contact with that friend, or fear of disappointing that friend. That's all included in that little friendship anxiety salad. It must be a pasta salad. Don't nobody really like pasta salad. Do people really like pasta salad? Because I feel like y'all lying. Anywho, a big contributor to friendship anxiety in autistic people is the fact that it is really difficult for a lot of autistic people to manage relationships. So why do autistic people tend to find it difficult to manage friendships? One of the reasons is because it's hard for autistic people to inherently know when they're infringing on someone's personal boundaries. Either that's personal space, comfort level, or frequency of spending time together, or how they express care. And many non-autistic people don't take kindly to that kind of behavior because, best case scenario, if this kind of behavior continues, they'll eventually blow up and do or say something really hurtful to that autistic person. The autistic person, now wounded in this case, retreats and decides to stop contacting that friend. Worst case scenario, the non-autistic person cuts off all contact from that autistic person without explanation. And the autistic person is left wondering what they did wrong, which could be so many things in their, from their perspective. And we will not sleep until we figured it out. I learned the other day that if you're autistic, you probably have other mental illnesses as well, just because of how the world treats autistic people and how we're traumatized in society. So, take care, friends. I don't mean to make you sad. Oh, no, here's a puppy on the screen. Please don't be sad. Another reason we struggle to manage friendships is because of nonverbal cues. Now, non-autistic people, or allistic people, if you're new here, fun little term for you. So basically, allistic people rely on nonverbal cues, like not texting you back, or stepping backwards when you approach, or giving stark one-worded answers to your questions or to your text messages to communicate something. Here's the problem. When you use these nonverbal cues to try to communicate that you want distance from somebody, it can be really confusing. Disinterest, repulsion, and even forgetfulness look the same. I don't know, they do to me. Have you ever forgotten to text a friend happy birthday? Even someone you really care about? I sure have, but that certainly doesn't mean that I don't care about them. To us, autistics, they can feel the same. And if you're someone who doesn't need a lot of human interaction and you don't text us back, or you forget, we can very much take that as you saying you never want to speak to us again. Dramatic? Yes, the drama. But also in completely the opposite direction. If you're trying to tell us that you never want us to speak to you again by not texting us back, we can very much interpret that as they probably just fell asleep. It hurts. Y'all, it hurts because it's so true. Why did y'all tell us? Nobody gonna tell us. I remember being in the vicinity around people who were like, I guess gossiping, I guess is what you would call it, about a mutual friend that they had who does something habitually that annoys them. And I remember asking, like, in the middle of it, even though, like, it is none of my business, but I remember asking them, have you ever told this friend that this bothered you? And they're like, no, because she should just know. In my head, I'm just like, is this the way autistic people operate? Like, is this the way autistic people operate? Like, is it really, if you don't know, then we'll punish you forever? And so that's the scary part, like, as somebody looking in, because, like, I know in my friendships, or at least I hope in my friendships, people know that they can tell me when I'm doing something that bothers them. But I think I've cultivated a space and a community that would lend itself to that. But also, I know that it is scary to confront people. I know that a lot of people are non-confrontational. A lot of people just want to have their little groups and then be mad in the background, be mad when they go home, but then like show up and be social and have fun. But I also feel like you do yourself and your friendships a disservice, and your relationships in general a disservice, when you're not honest about when something bothers you. Because like, you are putting yourself through more suffering by not communicating that. And then you're putting your friend through more suffering because you may retaliate based on whatever anger, resentment you built up over the thing you didn't communicate. And then this friend is just going to be confused of your behavior because you never told them that they were doing anything that bothered you. Like, so it just seems kind of silly. It just seems really silly for me. But I also understand that it's hard for some people to be vocal about that kind of stuff. But we could still do better. Yeah, and honestly, I think that's generally a fear that a lot of autistic people have from past trauma, is the fear that everyone in their life is faking it, or that they're actually being annoying when their friend tells them that they're not, because their friend doesn't want to hurt their feelings. Like, that's the fear. That's always the fear, because that stuff actually happens to us on incredibly large scales. Like, that it would drive someone up the wall. Like, it happens. Another reason why it might be hard for an autistic person to maintain a friendship is because of routines. And the diagnostic criteria for autism spectrum disorder is subscribing to your routine and really relying on it. We love a routine, girl. We love a routine. If you hang out with an autistic person regularly, then they may have integrated you into their routine. Speaking of, I didn't have my daily iced coffee this morning, and it's throwing me off. It is ripping me apart at the seams. It's good, I'm good, it's good. Anyway, if you're part of their routine, they probably need to wean themselves off of you because of how uncomfortable we tend to be with change. Now, another thing I don't hear people talking about is processing emotions. Now, emotional regulation is kind of twofold. It's the combination of A, being able to know exactly what it is you're feeling at any given moment, and B, being able to communicate that in a way that is both digestible for someone else and that is accurate to what you're actually experiencing. This is a hard balance to strike than you think, because autistic people are actually really sensitive. We've learned over time that feeling deeply is not often rewarded. So we bottle it up and we don't say, I want to spend more time with you, or I miss you, because we think we'll come across as needy. Friendship anxiety we might feel can appear as apathy to the people we actually like spending time with and really deeply care about, because we're afraid of showing too much interest. On the other end, emotions like jealousy and disappointment can actually be hard for us to pinpoint. Yeah, it's kind of like a game of telephone where the messaging from the brain gets a little muddled. It's like some of us can't really tell what the messages are trying to communicate with us in terms of our feelings. And so it's hard to communicate something you don't actually know that you're feeling. And we might also have a general distrust of autistic people's abilities to handle our genuine emotions. And I mean, we're not adorably excited about our special interests all the time, or cute or giggly. One hurt a lot of time, Shamaya, one hurt a lot of time. The older that you get, for a lot of autistic people, they're able to hone that in more, and they're able to be more conscious of their emotions, depending on the person, right? Because some people don't have that ability. I personally do, and I'm very actually in tune with my emotions and able to identify things very quickly in terms of what I'm feeling. But not all autistic people have that skill set. So I know what you're thinking. This is a lot for an autistic person to have to deal with. What are the solutions? Well, one of them is, if you are in a relationship or friends with an autistic person, explain what personal space looks like to establish clear boundaries and rules, and explain them to that autistic person in your life. Rules like no calling or texting past a certain hour. If you are someone who doesn't need a lot of interaction, maybe tell them, oh, I usually don't text a ton. Like I usually maybe text people once a week. Like I'm not super active on my phone, just to communicate that if you are not responding to them quickly, or if you are not reaching out to them often, it's not because you don't like them. It's just because that's not how you communicate typically. Or maybe you explain to them that you only have the bandwidth to hang out like once a week on the weekends or whatever is necessary for you. And if you ask for space, this is a really important part, y'all write this down. Reassure us that you still want a relationship with us, that you still like us, and that you're just seeking a mutually beneficial kind of level of interaction between the two of you. Because if you don't say that, we'll kind of just assume that you're trying to blow us off. You know, based on previous interactions with Autistic people, we'll be like, oh, do they actually never want to speak to me again and they're just being nice? Can you guess why? Weird thing about this, what I'm understanding from different trends that I see about relationship discourse on the internet is that most Autistic people interpret phrases like this as rude or impersonal, whereas for many Autistic people, this is the most intimate, kindest, most direct way to communicate with us. Being direct to us is kind. Being direct to Autistic people, I'm finding, is rude, and that's just fascinating to me, really. The more you can make it sound like almost like perfectly crafted, the more we know you care about us enough to perfectly craft this message. It's like, I don't know how to explain it. I feel like for a lot of Autistic people that would seem, I guess many would interpret that as manipulative, but no, I see it as putting so much care into how you are illustrating the way you want this relationship to play out. I don't know, I like that. Like there's a peer review moment. And honestly, the closer you can align it with that kind of language, the more it makes sense to my brain. And the reason is because it is so direct and clear. There's no flowery language to confuse you. It's just, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I expect from this relationship on your end. If you can do that, that's great. That's all you need. I feel like so much communication when it comes to relationships just is like so much language in how we communicate is so unnecessary. And I think a lot of Autistic people would agree with me because it's like, just say the thing. Just say the thing that you're trying to say. Stop adding all the extra flowery language. Say the thing you're trying to communicate. Say what you're trying to say. Just say the thing. And I feel like in professional spaces, they do that. They say exactly what they mean. There's no flowery language. I prefer that. I prefer that over, oh, you know, I love you. You know, I just, deep within my soul. It's like, no, just tell me exactly what you want. Tell me exactly what I'm doing wrong. Tell me exactly what you need me to do in this relationship, because everything else is a waste of time. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of energy for me to sift through what all this other flowery contextual language means. There was literally a trend on TikTok where this woman was breaking up with she was simulating a breakup using a lot of professional, workplace-esque language. And for me, I was like, thank goodness, someone is finally doing what we've been asking them to do for years. Just tell us exactly what's going on. And that person got so much hate online. So much hate. And I think a lot of Autistic people associate professional language, like that rhetoric, for an example, we really appreciate everything you've done for us, or I really appreciate everything you've done for me, or this was such a mutually beneficial relationship, or something like that, or it just sounds very professional and stark. A lot of non-autistic people interpret that kind of language as either condescending or disingenuous, which is fascinating to me. It's fascinating to me. Because it is simply what I prefer. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that either one of these approaches is right or wrong. They're just different, and different groups of people have different preferences, I think. So let's just not assume that everyone prefers one over the other. I really wish sometimes in relationships or friendships, I could just, at the beginning of, the course of the time, you just hand out a rubric to the other person hands you a rubric, and you both check it off as the relationship goes. As to say, is this expectation being met? Yeah. Is this expectation being met? Yeah. And I feel like, am I the only one? I feel like the world would be so much easier to live in if people just did that. Just friendship rubrics, please. Friendship rubrics, and then periodic, every quarter, have an assessment to see how the relationship is going, to see if your needs are being met. Why can't we just do that? But yeah, don't expect us to know anything about your needs without you explicitly telling us those needs. To make such assumptions is ableist. And I know that seems drastic, but it's all under the umbrella. If you try to tell someone who's hard of hearing to listen more closely when you tell them something, if they couldn't hear it the first time, yeah, that's ableism. Ableism is everywhere. I think when it comes to huge atrocities like racism, ableism, sexism, etc., a lot of people want to chalk it up to one big event or this, nefarious organization of something to disenfranchise another community. And it's like, it's not like that all the time. Sometimes there are people actively doing that, but other times it's negligence, it's being comfortable with ignorance, it's being a bystander when things like that are happening, when someone is being harmed in a marginalized community. A lot of things can fall under the umbrella of ableism that the average person wouldn't associate ableism with. But it's all in there. It's all in there. I hope that this video encourages you, if you are someone who is in a partnership with an autistic person, if you are someone who has a long-term relationship with an autistic person, or if you're newly a friend of an autistic person, I hope this encourages you to try harder, to be better, to make space for them, to ask more questions, and to be easy on yourself. Because activism starts in our relationships, frankly. And that's where I think that it makes the most progress first. Like, share, and subscribe if you like what I'm saying to you. Share this with your friends, and stay